Hello, my amazing students. We're going to do a review of chapter 4. It says chapter 14, but we're not doing chapter 14. We're doing chapter 4. And we're going to start with the first one. Now, what I want you to do is you have all of these problems on your teams that you can download. You are to work all of these problems with me or without me, whatever you want to do, and turn them in on Friday. If you do that, then you will get a second pretest for chapter 4 because everybody that took it today needs to take it again. It was a bum deal. Okay, so what we're going to do here on question number 1 is I'm going to review each one of the concepts in chapter 14, chapter 4, so that maybe you can do much better on your pretest, which cuts your homework considerably down. So here we're to use less than, greater than, or equal to compare the following numbers. Remember, we're talking about integer numbers, so we have some negatives here, and the more negative, the less that it is. So this one is going to be a less than. Let me get my marker here. This one will be negative 3 is actually greater than, greater than negative 11. Negative 11 is farther to the left, therefore it is less than negative 3. So negative 3 is greater than negative 11. 10 is greater than 1. And 4 is greater than negative 4. Okay, so here, this one gave people a lot of trouble. Maya is riding in a bike race that goes through a valley and a nearby mountain range. The table gives the altitudes in feet above sea level for the 5 checkpoints in the race. Use the table to answer the questions. Okay, so we have 5 checkpoints in this race. And how much higher is checkpoint 4 than checkpoint 3? Okay, so we're going to say 1195 minus, okay, so a negative 164. Excuse me, I can't write. Minus a negative 1, because we're trying to find out how much higher. That is a subtraction problem. So we're going to take 1195 and subtract negative 164. So I'm writing it correctly even though I can't seem to talk today. Okay, so 1195 minus a negative 164. Now remember, when we have subtraction, we're going to change subtraction into addition of the opposite. 5 and 5 is 10. Carry the 1. And 10 plus 6 is 16. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So 1,360 is the answer. The top of a hill rises 60 feet above checkpoint 3. What is the altitude of the top of the hill? Okay, so checkpoint 3 is negative 164, and then we're rising 60 feet above, so that's plus 60 feet. Now, since these are opposite signs, we're going to subtract the two numbers and take the sign of the big guy. Now, 164 is bigger than 60, so we're going to take 164's sign. We know the sign will be negative, and now we're just going to subtract the two numbers, which would give us 104. So it's a negative 104. Okay, so now we're on question 3, and we are just doing some subtraction. So 4 minus 9 is going to be a negative 5. If you just did it on the number line, you would see that. Here's 4, and we're going back. So here's 0. And if we're at 4 and we're going back at 9, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, I made them not quite even. But then we've got 5 more to go backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which winds up at -5. Or we could say that subtraction is addition of the opposite, and we have two opposite signs that we're adding together. And when we do that, we subtract and take the sign of the big guy. 9 minus 4 is 5. The big guy is 9. So we take 9's sign and we get -5. -2, let's just look at this on the number line. Okay, so here's 0. And here is -2. And then we're going backwards 3 more steps. 1, 2, 3. We would wind up at -5. Okay, so -5 is the answer. But let's see if we can do it with subtraction is addition of the opposite. So basically we're attaching this negative sign to the -3. So we're subtracting the minus sign to the 3 and making it a -3. So now we're adding like signs. Same sign, add, take the common sign. So there's same sign. We're going to take the common sign, which is negative. We add 2 and 3 together, and we get -5. Now we're multiplying. When we're multiplying, 2 negatives is going to make a positive. Okay, so now we have a positive result here. Then we're going to multiply by another negative, and we're going to get a negative result. Positive times a negative is a negative. And then negative times a positive is still a negative. So we're going to have a negative result. And basically, if you have an odd, oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. If you have an odd number of negatives, then you're going to end up with a negative sign when you're multiplying. Okay, that only works for multiplication. So now we've got to deal with the numbers. 2 times 1 is still 2, times 4 is 8, times 2 is 16. So -16 should be our answer. And now I'm going to very quickly go back and fix this one. This one was number 2. And when I did it, I copied the number down wrong. So I'm going to erase it right now so we can fix that and get this thing back where it's supposed to be. So that was, we're back on number 2. The number was a -164, which means that I'm going to add these two together, and that's not going to be what my answer is. 5 plus 4 is 9. We don't have a 1 to carry. 9 plus 6 is 15, and the rest was correct. So my bad for copying incorrectly. The second one was correct. Those answers are right, and that answer is correct. So now let's go to number 15, and we are write an ordered pair for the location of the bank. The bank is right here. Okay, so we're going to, let's see if I can zoom this up a little bit. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 places to the right, so that's going to be 4, comma, and then from the 0 baseline, it's 1, 2, 3 steps up. So 4, 3 would be the ordered pair that would go right in there. Okay, so now I've messed things up. I'm going to have to bring things back down again. All right, so now problem 6 of 14. Susan is riding in a bike race that goes through a valley and a nearby mountain range. The table gives the altitudes in feet above sea level of the 5 checkpoints of the race. Which checkpoint is the farthest below sea level? Okay, so below sea level would be negative, and it's going to be the most negative of all, and that would be checkpoint number 1. Okay, checkpoint number 1. is the lowest of them all. Okay, then the second part, it says which checkpoint is the farthest above sea level. So that's going to be positive, and the most positive would be checkpoint 2. And checkpoint 2 is the answer to the second part. And then it says, what does it mean for a checkpoint to have a positive altitude? Okay, a positive altitude would be it is above sea level. Okay, so now let's look at this one. We're dealing with absolute values. Now remember, when we're talking about an absolute value, we're talking about the distance of a number from 0. Okay, so -6 and +6 are both 6 steps from 0. So the absolute value of -6 is how far it is from 0, which is 6. 6 plus 9 is 15. Okay, and then we have this one right here where the absolute value is taken after we add -6 and 9 together. Opposite sign, subtract the two absolute values. So 9 minus 6 is 3. And then we take the sign of the big guy, which was 9. So that's +3. Absolute value of a +3 is still 3. Okay, number 8. Plot the numbers -2.5 and 2 3/4 on the number line below. Okay, -2 is going to go in this direction, -1, -2, -2.5. Okay, so -2 1/2 is labeled there. And then +2 3/4, 1, 2 3/4 is right there. And there we have our 2 points labeled. Number 9. Okay, so multiply. Now, remember, when I multiply by 10, I should not have to do this long multiplication, should I? When I multiply by a 10, I simply move the decimal one place to the right. Now, this is a -10, so it's going to change the sign, but it's not going to change the number. So negative times positive is a negative. And now I've taken care of the negative. So now 3.1262 times 10 moves the decimal one place to the right, which would be there. So we'd get -31.62. Okay, now in the next one, we're multiplying -7 times a +0.8. Negative times a positive will give us a negative. And then 7 times 8 is 56. So 7 times 0.8 would be 5.6 because we'd have one decimal in the answer. -5.6 is the answer. Okay, so now question 10. Name the quadrant or axis where each point lies. Okay, so the first point that we're going to look at says point B, and point B is right down here. Let me get my marker. Right down here is point B. Okay, and point B is not in a quadrant. Point B is on the y-axis. So point B is on the y-axis. Remember, this one is y, this one is x. So point B is on the y-axis. Okay, point M is right here. Point M is right here. Now, point M is left and down. Remember, this is quadrant 1. This is quadrant 2. We use Roman numerals for the quadrants. Not quite sure why. Okay, but we use Roman numerals, and M is in 1, 2, 3. Quadrant 3 is there. Okay, R is right here. R is in quadrant 2. And W is in quadrant 4. And we didn't have any points up here in quadrant 1, did we? So y-axis, quadrant 3, quadrant 2, quadrant 4 are the correct answers. Okay, so now we have an absolute value inside another absolute value. So we're going to pick this apart just a little bit at a time. Okay, now if we were going to do 10 minus 11, that's going to be a negative 1. Okay, because we could change this to a plus, a minus. And the minus is the bigger one, isn't it? So it's going to be minus 1. We subtract and take the sign of the big guy. All right, so now that negative 1 is inside the absolute value, which then makes it a positive 1. So now let's bring down our negative sign. And this is the absolute value of 2, which is still 2, which we will put 2 right there. And then we're going to bring down our big absolute values again. Now, 1 minus 2 is negative 1. But all of that is in the absolute value signs, and the absolute value of a negative 1 is a positive 1 because negative 1 is 1 step from 0. So the answer is 1. Number 12. Now we have to subtract, but we also have to get common denominators. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out the minus sign here, because I've got minus, and then having that negative on the bottom is just awkward. Let's move the negative to the top. Dealing with negatives on the bottom just sometimes leads to mistakes. So move the negative up to the top of a fraction, and now subtraction is addition of the opposite. So now you can see that we're really just adding 7/6 and 2/9 together, which means we have to get a common denominator. And both 6 and 9 go into 36. Okay, so 6 times 6 is 36. So we're going to multiply that by 6 over 6, which is 1. Okay, and then we're going to get 42 over 36. And then plus. And now 9 into 36 goes 4 times. So we're going to multiply this one by 4 over 4, which gives us 8 over 36. And now we're going to, since we have the same denominator, we're going to add the numerators and get 50 over 36. Now it says as a fraction in simplest form. That means we're going to leave it as an improper fraction instead of a mixed number because they didn't tell us to put it in a mixed number. But this is not yet the simplest form, is it? I see that I could divide both by a 2. So I'm going to divide 50 by a 2 and get 25. And I'm going to divide 36 by a 2 and get 18. And my final answer is 25/18. And number 13, evaluate each expression. Now I'm dividing by a negative. A positive divided by a negative will give me a negative answer. But I'm also dividing by 100, which means I move the decimal 2 places to the left. Dividing by 100, I move the decimal 2 places to the left. So my answer is negative 0.497. Okay, on the next one, I have a negative divided by a negative, which gives me a positive. Okay, negative divided by a negative gives me a positive. And 39.2 divided by, oops, that doesn't look like a 2, does it? Divided by a 7. 7 into 39. 7 goes into 35 5 times. 5 times 7 is 35. Bring down the 4 and bring down the 2. And see, because it's 35, that's the next thing is my decimal, isn't it? Okay, 7 and 42 goes 6 times. and it was positive, so positive 5.6 is the answer. Okay, and those are correct. And the last one says name the quadrant or axis where each point lies. Now here they're describing a point. Okay, point A has x coordinate that is negative, so let's just make our little grid here. We know that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Those how our quadrants are named. And then it says x coordinate is negative, so I'm moving left, and y coordinate is negative, so I'm moving left and down. That's going to be in my third quadrant, so we will circle quadrant 3. Okay, point B, x coordinate is positive and y coordinate is positive. Positive, positive, right up. So that's going to be in quadrant 1. And that is the end of your review for your pretest, which will be Friday. Now, all of these problems should be done. This is actual homework. Turn in all of these, which you will find printed. You can print them up from your teams. And if you don't do it from the printed, if you don't have a printer at home, you can just do each one of these on paper and turn them in. And like for that one, you don't have to write all of that. Just show me the work. Okay, on the big writing ones, you don't have to write all of that. Just show me the work. Okay? All right. This is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day. Have a beautiful day.